I really want a child of my own. My husband, now named John, said in a sarcastic tone. I couldn't hold back anymore and blurted out, "What? On our way here?" Up until now, John has constantly berated me for our inability to have children. Even now, he's holding my sister's baby in front of me, as if to make a point. Huh? John opened his mouth in surprise. Despite all the evidence, is he really pretending to be oblivious? I won't let him. You all will see. I'll drag you down to hell with me. My name is Natalie Johnson. I'm a 25-year-old housewife. All right, it's ready. I was preparing dinner in the kitchen. As I opened the big pot, a refined spice aroma wafted through the air along with the steam. I tasted the curry from the pot. The spiciness was just right and the meat was tender, just how he likes it. Just as I sighed in satisfaction, John came home. I'm home, my husband John announced. I went to the entrance to greet him. Welcome back. I made your favorite curry today, I said as I took John's bag at the entrance and was about to head back into the room. Suddenly he said, "Hey!" I felt John's fingers grip my shoulder firmly. I felt a sharp gaze piercing through my back. So how did it go? Today was the day, right? His words made me catch my breath. My heart raced and I felt dizzy. Answer me, he demanded. I swallowed hard and then opened my mouth. It didn't work. I gathered my courage and said, "This month, too, we didn't conceive again." I clenched my hands tightly. Seeing my reaction, John let out a big sigh. Again? Why can't we have a child? Making curry just to appease me. How obvious. I'm sorry, but don't make excuses, John interrupted. All my friends had kids right after getting married. Thinking of names, buying baby clothes, they all seem so happy. I want kids too, but we've only been married for 3 months. We don't need to rush. He clicked his tongue in annoyance. John stared intently at my face and then with a sneer said, "Maybe you're just infertile as a woman. Why don't you go see a gynecologist?" Snatching his bag from me, he stormed off to his room. I covered my face with my hands. I too long for a child, to carry a new life, to feel its preciousness. Preciousness, to be moved by every step of my child's growth. But maybe I'm not qualified for that. My parents disappeared before I could even remember them. They vanished, leaving me and my twin sister behind. I grew up without knowing a parent's love. Can someone like me really be a good parent? It's something I always worry about. But I can't give up. My desire for a child is genuine, and I'm sure someday God will bless me with one. I need to stay strong and wait for that day. And next month there's the long-awaited wedding. It's a bit late, but that only makes me more excited. All right, smile, smile. I went to call John for dinner. Today is his birthday. I've decorated a cake and prepared a present. Waiting for John's return, the doorbell rang. It's rare for someone to ring the bell. I hurried to open the door. There stood a woman, as beautiful as an actress with a stunning face and figure. She casually brushed her lustrous black hair off her shoulders. Hello there. It was my twin sister, Brittany. We're fraternal twins, looking nothing alike. Seeing my sister's face, I was taken aback. Brittany, what are you doing here? Oh, just thought I'd visit. But today's John's birthday. We were going to celebrate, just the two of us. I texted you, remember? Brittany gasped, putting her hands together at her chest. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I've been feeling lonely since you got married. Ever since I married, Brittany has been visiting unexpectedly, sometimes weekly or even every 3 days. This has limited the time John and I have alone, and we haven't been able to talk much lately. However, whenever Brittany says she's lonely, I find myself unable to say anything. After all, we're the only family we have. Hey, Natalie, I'm giving you this bag. I haven't been using it much lately. I opened the paper bag my sister handed me. Wow, this is from a famous brand. It's okay, it's okay. I usually give them to friends anyway. This time, I'm giving it to you, Natalie. Carry this when you go out for dinner with friends. Oh, but you don't have such friends, unlike me. Look at this. From the party I threw recently. Brittany showed me a photo. It captured her and over 100 friends enjoying a lavish dinner. I chuckled. Brittany, you're so popular. You're the exact opposite of me. You're amazing. You work hard, have money, and a boyfriend, right? Well, of course. It's pretty standard for me, Brittany said, beaming with pride. I smiled wryly at her response. What? Suddenly, she froze, looking at the table, then burst into laughter, holding her stomach. Wait, did you make this cake yourself? Yeah. Is it weird? Buying cakes from a store would have been better received. Making it yourself is just thankless. Poor Natalie. Brittany leaned in and smiled at me. But that's what's cute about you, she said with a grin. Then her expression changed, her eyes sparkling. Oh, I have some news to share. And home. Just then John came home from work. We stopped talking to welcome the man of the hour. As I was cutting the cake, John and Brittany started watching TV and getting excited. This actress is so pitiful. She couldn't have kids until she was 40. That's just miserable. Yeah, really, they agreed. They often shared a laugh over celebrities, like a real couple. Look, baby pictures. My heart skipped a beat at those words. Children are a symbol of happiness. I believe it's a woman's mission to give birth. A woman who can't have children isn't really a woman. I agree, Brittany. We really think alike. We do, don't we? I quietly continued serving the cake. Right, Natalie? John teased me, but Brittany suddenly covered her mouth. Oh, sorry. We're not talking about you. We're discussing something else, she said, then smirked at me. It was an expression I'd never seen on her before, filled with definite malice. The reason Brittany visited was to see her sister because she was lonely. That's why I couldn't say no. But was that really the truth? After the party ended and Brittany left, I received a message on my phone. I'm pregnant. Remember I said I had news? I'm planning to get married, too. Sorry for finding happiness before you. My family was becoming happy. I should be delighted, ready to celebrate. Yet inside me, something dark was brewing. Time flew by, and today was the long-awaited wedding. We chose a small local church as the venue. It was somewhat modest, but I wanted to save as much money as possible for the child we might have someday. After getting dressed in my wedding gown, I spent some relaxed moments in the dressing room. But that peace was shattered in an instant. Bang! The door flew open. I'm here. Congratulations, Natalie. Startled at her, turned to see. I turned to see my sister. But an even more shocking sight awaited me. Brittany, that outfit. What? What is it? I swallowed hard and said, you can't wear white at a wedding. Yes, Brittany was wearing a pure white dress. She clasped her hands together in an exaggerated manner. Sorry. I tried to avoid it, but I just fell in love with this dress, and besides, Brittany said, letting a sly smile creep onto her face. It suits me, doesn't it? This dress. She struck a pose with pride, tilting her head as if looking down on me, then scanned me from head to toe. Is that a handmade dress? It's more like a gown than a frock. Not the fluffy kind you'd expect at a wedding. Yes, I have a favorite designer who tailored it specifically for me. They embroidered it with my favorite flowers. Brittany only smiled with her lips. Well, good for you. Embroidery can feel a bit old-fashioned, but it suits you, Natalie. It's nice, right? Thanks. I forced a smile on my face. Hey, it's time, John said abruptly as he entered the dressing room. He didn't even say I looked beautiful. I let out a deep sigh. The ceremony went smoothly, and the reception began. Now, a speech from the family. Brittany stood up to the microphone. Instantly, the men in the room started murmuring. Beautiful. Gorgeous. I wish I could marry someone like her. Their gazes went beyond her dress, entangling with her beauty and figure. Ahem, hello everyone. I'm Brittany, the sister. Today there are a few empty seats, but thank you all for coming. At the reception, about 30% of the guests were absent. We had prepared seats for Brittany's friends, but none of them showed up. As you can see, my sister doesn't have many friends, just about 8. She spends her holidays cooped up, eating sweets and tapping on her phone. Sad, isn't it? There were chuckles from the audience. I felt the blood drain from my face. What was Brittany saying? This is a wedding, a reception, but I love my sister just the way she is. John, please make her happy. Brittany's angelic smile elicited a round of applause. I didn't even want to think about for whom that applause was meant. After the reception, I called Brittany to the dressing room. What was that about, Brittany? Those empty seats were for your friends, right? Making it seem like it was my fault. I pleaded desperately. But Brittany just laughed and patted my head as if I were a child. Don't be mad. If you worry about such things, life will be hard, you know. My friend said it was a great ceremony, too. John chimed in nonchalantly. Why are you doing this? They laughed at my panic as if it were a joke. I was left standing there, unable to comprehend the absurd reality. Soon after my in-laws arrived, they comforted me and scolded John and Brittany. They apologized, saying their son was at fault. I felt a bit better, but doubts about the two of them started to arise in my mind. The discomfort I had been feeling was slowly but surely accumulating. 10 months had passed. John, my in-laws, and I were driving to a certain place. John seemed excited in the driver's seat. I'm really looking forward to this. Aren't you, Natalie? I remained silent, looking down. We arrived at Brittany's house. John and my in-laws started to gather excitedly around the living room sofa. She's so adorable. So glad she was born healthy. At the center of it all was Brittany, holding her baby. She ran over to me with the baby in her arms. Look, Natalie, isn't she cute? She looks just like me. Brittany was radiating happiness, but her eyes were wide, seemingly enjoying my reaction, her mouth twisted in a smirk. Congratulations, I muttered, looking down. Wow, she's adorable. Can I hold her? Of course, Brittany giggled as John held the baby, his eyes shining. Babies are so cute. Look, Natalie. A symbol of happiness, right? Yes, I replied, feeling a twinge of jealousy towards Brittany. That's why you can't get pregnant. John held the baby as if to flaunt her in front of me, grinning at me. I wish I had a kid of my own. At that moment, something snapped in my head. Isn't she right here? They? John's mouth fell open. My in-laws' eyes widened in shock. Pointing at the baby in John's arms, I spoke clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Right there, your child. Your and Brittany's beautiful baby. The atmosphere froze in an instant. John's face turned pale, and Brittany's face contorted. I pulled out photos from my bag and scattered them on the floor. The photos showed John and my sister heading to a hotel together. I know everything about John and Brittany's affair. As I declared this, Brittany burst into laughter. Stop it, this is just some kind of edit, right? Don't be silly. The silly one is Brittany. I suspected you two, so I installed cameras in the house. Then on a day I was away, you too. I pulled out my phone and played a video. The living room displayed John and Brittany's affair. Brittany's face turned beet red. What is this? Stop it. Stop it now. She lunged at me, snatched my phone, threw it against the wall, and stomped on it repeatedly. The phone's screen shattered, emitting strange noises. I watched her coldly. It's useless, Brittany. She stopped tearing the photos, looking up at my words. Useless? What do you mean? Then a thunderous shout filled the room. John? My father-in-law had grabbed John by the collar. Did you betray Natalie? With her own sister? You monster, having a child too. How are you going to take responsibility for this, you idiot, son? My mother-in-law was in tears. John trembled under their accusations. Wait, it's not even proven that the child is mine and Brittany's. Natalie is just trying to frame me. Huh? I declared loudly. A DNA test will show who the child belongs to. Why not go to the hospital? But John stammered but still tried to plead with his parents. Look, Natalie can't even get pregnant. A woman who can't bear children isn't suitable as a wife, right? Are you out of your mind? A cheater like you is the one who's not suitable as a husband. John's eyes darted around, avoiding everyone's gaze. Seeing this, my in-laws let out a heavy sigh, turning away. Say something, Brittany. Why did you do this? Betraying your family is a terrible sin. Brittany shuddered, then said, It's not my fault. It's Natalie's fault. Her teeth gritted, she glared at me like a demon. It's all because you stole my first love. I was completely taken aback, having no recollection of such a thing. Ever since our parents left, I've always acted tough. But you were always so weak and annoying. And yet the guy I first loved rejected me for you. I like Natalie. She's so pitiful. I can't leave her alone. That's when I swore, if you want to be so pitiful, I'll make sure you are thoroughly. First, I wanted to make you feel lonely. I kept telling you our parents are gone. We're all alone. And you became such a gloomy child, unable to make friends. So pitiful. Then I wanted to instill in you a sense of inferiority. To make you think Brittany is amazing. I'm worthless. So, her giving me brand name items and bragging about her many friends was all to make me feel inferior. And probably taking John away too. You see now, right? You're beneath me. Betrayed by your husband, hated by your sister, you're the most pitiful woman in the world. Brittany laughed triumphantly. But I felt nothing. Am I really pitiful? I see, that's what you think, Brittany. Understood. She must have expected me to lose it. But she just stood there baffled. But that doesn't matter to me anymore. Now just hate you. I loved you so much, and you've been manipulating me all this time. It's terrible, so I've decided to return the favor. Everything you've done to me, I mimicked her laugh. And Brittany backed away, as if she had seen a monster. Was my face that scary? Stay tuned, both of you, I said as I left the house alone. Months passed since then. John handed me divorce papers and left, probably to my sister Brittany's place. Today I'm at a wedding in a grand church in New York, wearing a thick, long cardigan over my dress, making sure it's completely hidden. The place is packed with over 100 guests. I can barely see the bride and groom. They probably can't see me either. The couple enters and applause erupts. The minister begins, "Do you, John, take Brittany to be your wife through good and bad, rich and poor, sickness and health?" It's my sister Brittany and John's wedding. I learned about my sister's wedding a month after the chaos unfolded. Brittany had announced her shotgun wedding with John on social media. The post even detailed the wedding plans. They must have started preparing early. They must have been preparing for a while, probably even before my own wedding. That's why Brittany didn't invite her friends to my wedding. I didn't make invitations for my sister's friends. She said she'd create a group chat and confirm the attendees herself. She wanted to reduce my burden with the busy wedding preparations. I thought it was her way of being thoughtful. But now I think she never even created that group chat. She lied about everyone attending. No one was invited to mine, so no one came. A simple answer. Reflecting back, it seems John only invited casual acquaintances. I've never met his close friends before or after our marriage. Whether John was already connected with Brittany before marrying me, or it was just bad timing, I'll never know. But one thing is clear. They want this to be their only wedding. They want to erase all their time with me. I can't forgive that. What was the time I loved John, the time I spent for him, all for? Destroying one person's life for their own happiness is unforgivable. I reaffirm my resolve for revenge. After the ceremony, the reception began. It was a standing party, perhaps due to the crowd bustling with people. I hid myself in a corner. Here's a special telegram announcement from the groom's parents who couldn't make it today. We have a special movie. Please watch, the staff announced proudly. John and Brittany's eyes widened in surprise. The screen suddenly lit up, displaying John's parents. They were smiling, but their eyes were sharp, like predators. It's finally starting. I watched the screen and smirked subtly. John, Brittany, congratulations on your wedding. Congrats? The couple in the video smiled at each other. Thank you all for coming today. As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to give you a gift from us. Excited murmurs rose from the crowd. What is it? A gift? John's mother interrupted. It's a gift of words. Now over to you. Leave it to me. John's father's face, previously relaxed, suddenly turned stern. There's the bride, isn't she? He said, pointing to Brittany. She's John's mistress. And not just any mistress, but his wife's own sister. Do you understand what we're saying? The people here aren't just a fresh bride and groom. They're immoral cheaters. We will never accept this marriage of these two. And we're cutting ties with them. Stop the video. At that moment, John's scream echoed as the video abruptly stopped. But it was already too late. The guests were speechless from the shocking revelation. John stood up and shouted, "Everyone! That was just a joke by my parents." Bit too stimulating, huh? The guests began to murmur. That's right, it was just... Brittany grabbed the mic, trying to explain, when suddenly I snatched the mic from her. It's true, I said with just one word. Then I removed the cardigan I was wearing. Underneath was a white dress. A year ago, I married John in this dress. Remember, John? John turned pale and froze as I looked at him. I took advantage of this moment to pull out something from an envelope and scattered it around the venue. They were photos of Brittany and John's affair and of my wedding with John. There were enough copies for everyone to see. I looked around the chaotic venue and took a breath. I did it. I really did it. After everything, I collapsed in a daze. Suddenly, someone grabbed me by the collar. Looking up, Brittany's eyes were wide open in shock. "Why are you here? I didn't invite you. I didn't tell you the place or time." I couldn't help but laugh at her panic. "What are you talking about, Brittany?" "Brittany, you told me yourself on social media, hinting, right?" I figured it out quickly. Brittany's wedding announcement had the date clearly mentioned. Every time she updated her social media, she described the venue and her careful selection in detail. It must have been a taunt towards me. I'm having such a beautiful wedding. Not like yours. But that became my clue. I found it easily online. Social media is scary, huh? Why did they let you into the venue then? Your name wasn't on the list. I sighed and gave the obvious answer. Because I'm her sister. Brittany's friend was at the reception. She recognized me, so she let me in. They wouldn't turn away the bride's sister, would they? You mean you were behind that video too? You brought it as a surprise, keeping it a secret from me? We didn't invite his parents. His parents sided with me. They came to my house, apologized, and said they couldn't accept John and Brittany's happiness. So we all planned today's event. I pointed around the venue and laughed. Look, everyone's leaving. Brittany turned pale as she watched the guests leave. Wait, her friends turned back in unison. Oh, Brittany, why are you leaving? Those photos? The photos might be fake. But we don't want anything to do with you. Being seen with someone who might have had an affair lowers our value. Value, but we're friends, right? Funny, considering you lured us with branded stuff. We befriended you for that reason, too. So we cooperated, right? For group photos to show off to someone. Let me say this one last time. You see us as numbers, right? The more the better. The individual doesn't matter. That hit the nail on the head. Brittany bit her lip. Goodbye, Brittany. Her friends left. In the silent venue, only Brittany, sitting on the floor, John holding his head and I, eerily calm, remained. Well, Brittany, see you around? I left the venue. A few days after Brittany's wedding, I was relaxing at home. But I knew this peace was temporary. The doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and opened the door. Natalie, John lunged at me. How dare you ruin our happiness with such a foolish act? You're unbelievable, you wicked woman. Brittany appeared behind John and pushed me. I hit the wall and slid to the floor. But I didn't care. I said coldly, you two never learn. But it's good you came. Brittany crossed her arms and looked down at me. John, check your email. There's important information. What? I had sent an email just before opening the door. Attaching photos and videos. Photos and videos? You're doing that again. John begrudgingly checked his phone. His face turned angrier. He turned to Brittany, thrusting the phone at her. Brittany, who is this old man? The photo showed Brittany in revealing clothes, holding hands with several older men. The video captured her entering and leaving hotels with them and receiving money. It's sugar dating, right? Brittany, I stated matter-of-factly. Brittany, you always buy so many branded things, probably to show off to me. It's impossible on a regular employee's salary. So I did some digging. It was almost like playing detective. Pretty fun, actually. You, Brittany, snarled. I turned to John, who was hanging his head. Hey, John, did you do a paternity test? What? Remember, I said a DNA test would prove if the child is really yours and Brittany's. No need for that. I mean, John gasped, realizing the dreadful possibility. John, I said clearly, whose child is it, do you think? In that moment, John grasped Brittany's hand tightly. He looked directly at Brittany and murmured, Brittany, did you betray me? After all you've done to me, even the child? What are you talking about? The child is yours. Are you doubting me? Of course not. How can I trust a woman who does sugar dating in secret? You trust Natalie over me. So you'll agree to a DNA test then? We'll go to the hospital tomorrow, okay? John clung to Brittany's hand, probably wanting to believe her. Brittany stumbled over her words. Her reaction was evidence enough. John ruffled his hair in frustration. Damn it. I thought having a beautiful wife would be a bragging right, but look at this mess. You sisters have ruined my life. John stormed out, lashing out at furniture and appliances on his way. Brittany, pushed aside by John, sat down on the floor, sulking. Brittany, I looked down at her and taunted. How does it feel now? Brittany twitched in response. When the test comes out, John will leave you. And now you have no friends left.
Brittany exclaimed, clearly not expecting such a question.
Ugh.
What are you talking about?
I never once thought you were amazing. Not even for a moment.
I glanced at Brittany's bag tossed on the floor.
So Brittany, you never had the upper hand over me. What? No way. You used to say you envied me, thought I was amazing. I said that to make you happy. Because we're family. I wouldn't show indifference when you're proudly sharing. In a word, I was flattering you. You took it seriously, because Brittany, I loved you. We were the only family, and I didn't want to lose you, so I was considerate. Brittany shouted with a trembling voice. Don't lie. You were troubled because you couldn't have children. That doesn't matter to me anymore, I replied with a sigh. With John, I thought I had to have children, but life isn't that simple. There are different people, different ways of living. I'm done being obsessed and suffering over having children. What did I do? Brittany began to tremble violently. I dragged her out of the house, unable to move on her own. Goodbye, Brittany. I closed the door with a thud. Afterwards, Brittany and John divorced. It turns out the child wasn't John's, according to the DNA test. Their affair spread quickly. As they had invited 100 people to the wedding, John and Brittany lost their jobs, couldn't find new ones, and are struggling with day labor. I moved away to start anew. In this place free of Brittany and John, I plan to forget everything and restart my life. I'm going to a friend's house today. She just had a baby. I ring the doorbell, holding a baby gift. My friend opens the door with the happiest smile. Congratulations. I sincerely offer my congratulation. No matter how much I try to build a good relationship with Emily, she always speaks rudely to me and acts sarcastically. When my husband and I eagerly went to Sophie's 5th birthday party, the cake and meal Emily prepared were only for 3 people. Emily, what about our meal? There's only enough for the family. What? I don't have food for stingy people. She waved the gift envelope I had just given her. Giving $1,000 for your granddaughter's celebration? Are you kidding? My dad gave $4,000. At least $2,000 is the norm. I thought it was a standard amount. I've had enough. Can we cut ties after today? Emily said this with a beaming smile. My parents are enough for me. We don't need you guys. In fact, you're in the way. My husband Dan and I looked at each other. Shall we go home? Yeah. I clenched my fist. No more patience. I'll make her regret ruining Sophie's birthday and treating us badly. I'm Barbara, a 60-year-old housewife, living with my husband Dan. I work part-time at a restaurant. Since our eldest son Mike landed a job at a big corporation, we felt a weight lifted off our shoulders. On weekends, Dan and I enjoy going to movies and traveling, just the 2 of us. Dan is kind and Mike is considerate and serious. I feel blessed, but secretly worried about Mike not showing any interest in marriage. Even in his late 20s, I wanted to be called grandma someday. However, I understood that many young people nowadays choose not to marry. Just when I was about to give up, Mike brought his fiancée home. Her name was Emily, and she was the daughter of a well-known local business family. They met at a cafe near Mike's workplace. Emily, not keen on office work, was working there part-time for social experience, as her cousin would eventually take over her father's business. She seemed like a beautiful and capable woman, the kind to take the lead with Mike. After they got married, they had a daughter named Sophie the following year. They lived in an apartment in the same city and would often visit us during holidays, bringing Sophie along. My husband Dan and I adored Sophie immensely, and Emily seemed happy to see this. However, our initially good relationship with Emily started to crack, beginning with her requests. As usual, the family came to visit, and while Dan and Mike went shopping, Emily confided in me. She explained that Sophie had sensitive skin, so they had to be careful with the clothes they bought for her. Good quality clothes were pretty expensive, and I wondered if she was hinting for me to buy baby clothes. I knew that Mike earned well above the average salary for men in their 30s, so if he knew Emily wanted to buy clothes for Sophie, he would surely agree without a second thought. However, I also considered that they might be saving for the future and didn't want to spend from their household budget. I had initially thought that Emily's family was wealthier than ours, but perhaps it was difficult for her to ask her parents for money. "Emily, do you want some clothes?" I hesitantly asked, and her face lit up instantly. "Yes, I love this brand. It's so cute. Famous actresses often dress their kids in it," she said, showing me a picture on her phone. I was stunned when I saw the prices. A short-sleeve t-shirt was $140, a lace dress was $200, and brand logo ballet shoes were an astonishing $2,000. "Emily, isn't that a bit extravagant for folks like us?" I gently chided, but she retorted, "Don't you think Sophie's adorable? I don't mind wearing thrift store clothes, but I want my daughter to wear the best." Overwhelmed by her passion, I ended up buying her high-end clothes and shoes as she begged. I didn't feel comfortable telling Dan, so I kept it to myself. I bought them with my own salary, so I convinced myself that it was okay. After that, I continued to give her clothes and shoes for events like birthdays and Christmas, separate from other gifts. However, one thing puzzled me. Whenever the clothes arrived, Emily would always send a thank you message, but she never posted a photo of Sophie wearing them. One weekend, while having lunch with a friend, I shared this with her. She thought for a moment, then showed me a flea market website. "Is this?" I exclaimed in surprise. The same items I gave Emily were listed 2 days after I sent them. "The same items you bought for your daughter-in-law?" "Yes, the spring limited edition, no doubt. And they're unopened. I always shop here for kids' clothes, so I keep an eye on it. This brand is popular, so unopened items sell for a good price," my friend said, frowning. I remember this seller's username. It's unique. They list high-end items several times a year. Maybe they're selling gifts they received. I felt bitter. This could be a coincidence if it happened just once, but if it keeps happening, it's safe to assume Emily is secretly selling the clothes I send. Or perhaps she's been having me buy them with the intention of selling them all along. As I kept checking the website, I noticed that 2 days after I sent clothes, the same items would always appear, listed under the same username. Last Thanksgiving, when I visited my eldest son and his wife, I finally told Emily I'm gonna stop sending clothes after this time. "Why?" Emily puffed her cheeks. "Dan's against it. Says they're too pricey for kids' clothes. But don't worry, we'll still give toys and gift cards like before," I explained, having discussed this belatedly with Dan. Dan agreed with me. Emily's a stay-at-home mom. She's probably selling the clothes for extra cash. If it's hard to say no, just use my name. "Thanks, I'll do that." Sure enough, when I mentioned Dan's name, Emily swallowed her complaint. "She's not comfortable with quiet Dan." "Fine. But your husband's stingy," she spat out bitterly. But after that, she stopped asking me for kids' clothes. There were other troubling things about Emily's behavior. She's either germophobic or just doesn't like me. Whenever I tried to touch Sophie, she insisted I wash and sanitize my hands. Furthermore, when I visited Emily in Mike's apartment, Emily would follow me around with an alcohol spray in hand, promptly disinfecting any place I touched. Even in these times sensitive to infections, being treated like a germ was unpleasant. As my distrust of Emily grew, she suddenly called me. "Surprised," I answered, and Emily said cheerfully, "We're going to have a birthday party for Sophie. Would you and Dan like to come celebrate with us?" "Really? Is that okay?" I asked back, surprised. Usually we invite her kindergarten friends, but this year we already celebrated with kids who have birthdays close to hers. "So we thought we'd invite you and Dan. How about next Sunday?" "We'll see. Thank you, we'll be there." I was delighted since I usually sent the presents by mail. Is the doll she wanted before okay for a present? Or should I get a gift card? Could you make it cash this time? Understood. I consulted with Dan and wrapped $1,000, then headed to Mike and Emily's apartment the following Sunday. In their living room, stylishly decorated with pastel balloons and garlands, stood Sophie, shyly smiling, wearing a pink dress and a ribbon in her hair. "Grandpa, Grandma, Thanks for coming to my birthday party, Sophie said, bowing slightly. Dan and I couldn't help but smile warmly. She always looked cute, but today she was like an angel or a fairy. Thank you for inviting us. Turning 5 today, you're a big girl now. Yeah, I'm a big girl now. Her confident response was adorable. Mom, Dad, thanks for coming. Mike appeared and Dan and I gasped. It had been months since we last saw him. He looked much thinner and had dark circles under his eyes. Have you lost weight? Busy with work? Yeah. Mike's vague smile made me uneasy. Mike, you're keeping up with your health checkups at work, right? Yeah, I am. Oh, sorry, I've got a call from work. He stepped into the hallway, ended the call quickly, and returned. I gotta go to the office. I'll be back by evening. Emily, please order dinner for Mom and Dad, too. Okay. As Mike hurriedly left, Emily brought in a pizza and a whole birthday cake to the dining table. Daddy's gone to work, so let's eat first, she said, cutting the bear-shaped cake into 3 pieces. 3 pieces? I noticed that Emily had set out only 3 plates and sets of cutlery. In front of a puzzled Dan and me, Emily transferred the pizza onto plates. Emily, what about ours? I asked, confused. There's only enough for the family. What? I don't have food for stingy people, she said, almost singing, waving the envelope I had just handed her. $1,000 gift for your granddaughter's birthday. Are you kidding? My dad gave $4,000. At least $2,000 is the norm. I thought it was a normal amount. She looked at me and laughed derisively. Normal? Oh, I guess for people working in small factories or part-time housewives. It's hard to give $1,000. My apologies. Hey, Dan's face changed color, but Emily ignored him and kept talking in a mocking tone. Well, I knew this family was poor before we got married. The house is shabby, the interior is old, and the whole family is stingy. It's almost funny how much this is a mismatched marriage, but it's worse than I expected. Anger bubbled up inside me. Mismatched marriage? She was the one who pursued Mike and started their relationship. I shouldn't be treated this way. So, I've always been thorough with disinfecting to prevent your poverty germs from spreading to us. It would be terrible if the daughter of a company president and Mike, working at a big corporation, got tainted with poverty. That explains why she was always vigorously wiping her hands with disinfectant wipes until her skin almost peeled. But I've had enough. Can we cut ties after today? Emily said this with a full smile towards Dan and me. Just having my parents is enough? We don't need you guys. In fact, you're in the way. Dan and I exchanged glances. I thought he would be angry, but he seemed more exasperated and detached than anything. Shall we go home? As we headed to the entrance, feeling weary, Sophie came running after us, looking confused. Grandpa, Grandma, are you leaving already? I was looking forward to playing with you, Sophie said, tears starting to fall. My heart clenched. I kneeled and hugged her. I'm sorry, dear. We're leaving today, but we'll come to see you again soon. Be good and listen to your mom and dad until then, okay? Okay, I understand. As Dan patted Sophie's head, Emily stood behind him with her arms crossed, glaring at us. Dan and I left Sophie's place with heavy hearts. In the evening, Mike called me to... When I got home, Sophie's eyes were all swollen. Seems like she cried a lot after you two left. Is that so? Mom, you left because you had a stomachache, right? It can't be helped. Did you go to the doctor? It's better now. Thank you. Mike's kindness warmed my heart. Compared to him, Emily is a terrible daughter-in-law. After hanging up, I felt a surge of anger and clenched my fists. Emily probably doesn't care that Sophie was sobbing because she drove us away. No more patience. I'll make her regret treating us badly and ruining Sophie's birthday. Emily declared that she was cutting ties, but she still seems to be playing nice in front of Mike. She hasn't left the family messaging app, so Dan and I can still communicate with Mike's family. So I decided to use that to expose Emily's true nature to Mike. I waited for Mike's break time at work and posted the flea market site's screenshots to the group message. Emily immediately responded, "Barbara, please delete that photo right now." "Oh, Emily, I thought you were cutting ties with us." Right after my reply, a message from Mike appeared. "Emily, what's this about?" "Mike, don't believe her. Cutting ties is just a lie from your mother." "A lie? No, I'm talking about the clothes." The clothes Mom gave Sophie, I never saw her wearing them. Were you selling them on the flea market? Emily seemed shaken, not replying after reading the message. And it's all of them, right? You had Mom buy them just to sell? I can't believe this. It's a coincidence. Just happened to be someone else selling the same clothes. Mike pressed Emily as she tried to bluff. That's your username, right? When I get home, I'm checking Sophie's closet. You're insisting they're there, right? I remembered. Sophie got them dirty right after I put them on her, so I threw them away. All 20 outfits? Selling all of them would easily make over $2,000, right? Mike's message conveyed a quiet anger. After a while, a message from Mike to me appeared. Mom, can you and Emily come to our house after work? I want to have a discussion. The four of us. Wait, I can't go. I have to take care of Sophie. Emily panicked, but Mike replied, Wait, I can't go. I have to take care of Sophie. I'll ask your parents then, so I'll be over after dinner. I have to get back to work now. Mike said, ending his messages. Immediately after, Emily called me. Hey, old lady. Stop causing trouble. Oh, you're so scary. I pretended to be intimidated by Emily's ranting, but she didn't lower her tone and continued to yell at me. I told you we're cutting ties. Don't be so chummy in the family messages. That message was for Mike. You're the one who reacted on your own. I snapped back. So, are you canceling your visit tonight? Mike will get suspicious, you know? Emily clicked her tongue on the other end and said in a low voice, Fine, I'll come. But if you pull any more stunts, I won't let you see Sophie ever again. Remember that. All right. See you tonight. After hanging up, Dan, who had been listening to the whole conversation, and I exchanged looks and smiled. That evening, Mike and Emily came to our house. Sophie had apparently been left with Emily's parents. Emily, radiating displeasure, didn't change her attitude even as the four of us sat at the dinner table. But she turned pale as soon as I laid out the photos, while she frantically gathered the photos and stuffed them into her skirt. I stuffed the photos into her skirt pocket. I placed the remaining ones in front of Mike. They were pictures of Emily closely embracing a man at a bar. Where did you find these? Emily glared at me with intense eyes. I explained with a smile. A friend's daughter works at a cabaret club near the station. She told me that recently a woman named Emily has been causing a scene at a bar she visited with her friends. Emily stood out because she's as beautiful as a model. I showed her your photo and she recognized you right away. I searched for the username you use on the flea market site on social media and found these images, I said as Mike picked up one of the photos. His usually calm face now showed intense anger. A bar, huh? Mike, there's a reason for this. You left Sophie with me after working overtime and spent your nights at places like this. All that helping a friend was a lie, wasn't it? Emily swallowed her excuses at his icy tone. Mike sighed and covered his forehead with his hand. So, you were selling the clothes Mom gave you to play around with some guy you met at the bar? No wonder your allowance was never enough for that. It's not like I was cheating or anything, so it's fine, isn't it? Emily defiantly responded. I relaxed my mouth. Well, there's more to come. By the way, Mike, did you bring what I asked? Yeah. When Mike took out credit card statements and a bank passbook from his bag, Emily's eyes widened. Don't take those out without asking. The card is mine and the bank account is joint. It's fine to show them, Mike said, dismissing her objections. Emily shut up, fuming. Mike spread both the credit card statement and the bank passbook on the table, and as soon as he saw them, he exclaimed, "Oh my Dan!" I also peered over, feeling the urge to cover our eyes at the sight. No wonder the credit card had a revolving credit balance of over $40,000. And the bank account showed just a few dollars. No way! Mike was stunned and Emily turned away, sulking. Well, spending millions at a bar would burn through money quickly. Mike finally exploded with anger. Emily, you shouldn't touch a child's savings like that. Are you even a mother? Shut up, all of you, Emily said dismissively, brushing her hair back. What's wrong with me using your money, you stingy man? She stood up and ranted at Mike. Just so you know, I married you because you work at a big corporation. I thought I could spend money freely and live in luxury without working. But then we started living together, and it's all about saving for the kid, eating in to save money, ordering me around. Who do you think you are? Mike's face stiffened. After a tense stare down with Emily, he let out a small sigh. All right, let's get a divorce. I can't do this anymore. Since you've caused Mom so much distress, I'll ask for alimony too. Mutual distress. Final S dead. He'll gladly pay the alimony and the credit card bills. I don't need any of you, Emily said arrogantly, laughing in a shrill voice. I presented my phone to her. Are you sure you should be saying that? What? Dad's company went bankrupt. Emily's eyes widened in shock. She snatched my phone and stared at the screen, frozen. It was on the local internet news just now. Haven't you heard anything from your dad? He mentioned something about having a tough time with finances due to the recession. But he always listened to my requests. All of Emily's earlier bravado was gone. She had completely lost her color and was trembling in her voice. Then her phone rang. Taking out her phone, Emily swallowed hard and answered the call. Hey Dad, the company hasn't really gone bankrupt, right? I'm sorry I tried, but it was no good. So, sorry I can't help you with money anymore. Emily's face twisted dramatically. She looked like she was about to cry. What? But that's gonna be a problem. Paying the employees is all I can manage. I'm retiring as president and will live leisurely with your mom, so you should get along with Mike and Sophie. Emily's father was loud, so the whole conversation was audible. Get along? I'm probably going to get a divorce. Oh, really? Oh, I got a call from the bar. They asked when you're going to pay your $20,000 tab. Emily's face contorted. I was, thinking of asking Dad. No, that's impossible. Her father cut her off sharply. You're 35, Emily. A proper adult. You need to figure this out yourself. Good luck. Holding the disconnected phone, Emily looked completely drained. I delivered the final blow. You know, Dan and I have been saving money for Sophie when she grows up. $200,000. Emily's eyes widened as if they were about to pop out. We didn't remodel our old house and saved by cutting back. I thought of giving it to you to pay your debts if you apologized and showed remorse for your past actions. We're useless to you, right? Then you don't need it. Emily's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but she couldn't form words. All right, this conversation is over. Goodbye. Coldly stating this, Emily grabbed Mike's arm and begged with bloodshot eyes. Mike, you won't abandon me, right? I was just joking about wanting a divorce. I'll apologize. Let's continue to get along, for Sophie's sake, okay? Mom, Dad, sorry for staying late. I'll discuss the divorce with Emily. Mike said calmly, taking the frantic Emily home. Emily wanted Mike to reconsider, but of course that didn't happen, and they ended up divorcing. Mike had to deal with the payments for the credit card he unknowingly shared with Emily, their joint bank account, her tab at the bar, and an additional $20,000 in alimony. Burdened with debts, Emily, unable to rely on her parents, reluctantly started working part-time jobs. Life became tough for Emily, and under the condition of not receiving child support, Mike took custody of Sophie. Afterward, Mike regularly allowed Sophie to meet Emily. Emily, working from early morning to late at night, had lost her former glamorous look and seemed rather shabby. She was freed from the days of being pestered for money and subjected to Emily's snide remarks, enjoying each day freely. As it was hard for Mike to raise Sophie alone, we suggested he move in with us. Dan and I decided to help with raising her. On days when Mike had to work overtime or on weekends, I, who returned from work earliest, would pick Sophie up from daycare. Sophie, resembling her father, was a very kind child. She would make beaded jewelry and give them to Dan and me on our birthdays, along with letters. I look forward to her future. The three of us adults want to warmly watch over Sophie's growth. Enough already. You keep leaving your infant with us almost every day. Both Mom and I are really inconvenienced by this. I was bewildered by the sudden angry call from my sister-in-law. What are you talking about? My remark only infuriated her more. Playing dumb, are you? You're unfit to be a mother if you can't even take care of your own baby. This was a completely unfamiliar story to me. After all, I don't even have an infant. Are you mistaken? I've never left my child with you, and my daughter is already 3 years old. Our assertions were not aligning, and my sister-in-law's irritation was palpable. However, my statement seemed to make her realize something was amiss. What do you mean? This wasn't a simple misunderstanding by my sister-in-law. In fact, it was all a calculated scheme by someone else, and she had been deceived too. Then who was that baby? Someone had concocted a series of lies, crafting a perfect scenario. But this call from my sister-in-law began unraveling the lies one after another. The meticulously planned deception fell apart, and the final chapter of the plot turned out to be an irony beyond anyone's imagination. My name is Haley. By day, I'm a salesperson at a major bank, busy with client visits. After work, I rush to the daycare where my 3-year-old daughter, Mabel, waits. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mabel. My daughter runs towards me with a big smile. It's the moment my day's fatigue vanishes. Here I switch from a salesperson to a mother. It's the start of my mom's duties. After getting home with my daughter, we have dinner, prepare for the next day, and take a shower. Then I put her to bed, marking the end of my day. This is my daily routine. My husband, Luke, is busy with work and often comes home late. Thus, household and childcare duties are left to me. My husband and I met through work. He was the polite staff member at the company I visited for sales. His company is a small to mid-sized one, but fairly well known, with increasing sales. Our relationship deepened over several meetings, eventually leading to dating. At that time, I was 36 and he was 30. He's very kind and gentle, and I felt comfortable around him, which made me think about marriage. Then a joyous event occurred. I was pregnant with our child. Of course, Luke was overjoyed, and we quickly got married. We vowed to share both joys and sorrows, building a happy family together. However, the reality of married life was far from my ideal. Haley, you left the laundry overnight again? Stains and odors can settle in. It's important for a businessman to make a good impression. Don't you want your husband to always wear clean shirts? We chose an apartment near my in-laws at my husband's request, but it turned out to be a hellish choice for me. After marriage, I realized that my husband hadn't separated from his mother. He was a so-called mama's boy. He spoke to his mother on the phone almost every day, neglecting the time he should have been spending with me. To my astonishment, most of their conversations were complaints about me. After hearing from Luke, his mother would come over early in the morning to lecture me. I'm doing the laundry now. I couldn't move last night due to severe morning sickness. I know how important it is for a businessman to be clean. I wasn't being lazy. During my pregnancy, the persistent morning sickness sometimes made me leave work early or take a day off. Then the next morning, I'd hear how nice it must be to sleep all day while skipping work. If you're taking a day off, at least finish the household chores perfectly. Luke is working hard while you're sleeping. At least make dinner for him. I wonder why she can't understand my condition, despite having been pregnant and giving birth herself. Unable to eat properly and exhausted physically and mentally, she relentlessly pressed on me. Pregnancy isn't a sickness. Don't be so soft. Am I the one who's wrong? I can't tell anymore what's right and what's wrong. I was too exhausted to even think about it. Of course, pregnant women with big bellies feel tired. If you can't handle that, you're not cut out to be a mother. My mother-in-law's criticism never stops. You're already 37, aren't you? It's one thing for a younger daughter-in-law, but at your age, you shouldn't be whining. I never complained to my husband or mother-in-law. Yet, she always finds a way to throw a jab at me. It would have been better if you were younger. She clearly dislikes the fact that I'm older than my husband. I can't change my age, but I can change the environment. Maybe once the baby is born, she'll change her mind and accept me. I was hoping that a good relationship could be built through the baby. Half a year later, I safely gave birth to my daughter. However, my mother-in-law showed no interest in her. While I was on maternity leave, struggling with new motherhood, my mother-in-law and husband went out frequently together. When my husband came home and saw the messy house, he reported back to her. Then she'd come over screaming at me. This was my daily life. My husband's attachment to his mother grew stronger after our daughter was born. He probably couldn't accept becoming a father, and he probably still wanted to be his mother's boy. The same was true for her. Her son seemed to be her favorite. Their bond got stronger, and I was at my wit's end. When my daughter turned 1, she started daycare, and I returned to work. Around that time, my husband began coming home later and later. One day I saw his payslip. He's working so hard every day, staying late, but there's no overtime pay. What's going on? He would come home after midnight due to overtime. But his efforts weren't reflected in his salary, and I was puzzled. Well, we're a small business. Unlike big corporations, overtime is just part of the job. It's the same for most small businesses. My husband defended his company. But this is a violation of labor laws. It's too much. Why not talk to your company? He turned red and raised his voice. He raised his voice at me. Do you want me to get fired? Don't you dare do anything unnecessary. This was the first time he had raised his voice at me. I was shocked and couldn't find the words to respond. Why was he so protective of his company? There might be another reason. Years passed and now my daughter is 3. She has asthma and visits the pediatrician, but otherwise she is growing well. As usual, I was out on sales calls. Breathing out in the dry air, I could see my breath, a sign of winter's arrival. Then suddenly my phone rang. It was from my daughter's daycare. I stopped on the sidewalk, my hands numb from the cold, and answered the phone. It sounded panicked. My daughter had a fever. She was so energetic this morning when I dropped her off at daycare. Maybe she caught a cold in this chilly weather. I cut my work short and hurried to the daycare. My daughter looked exhausted and was struggling to breathe. And when I picked her up, her body was alarmingly hot. Realizing this was serious, I immediately took her to the pediatrician. The doctor said her asthma had worsened, her blood oxygen was low, and she was in a dangerous state. She needed to be hospitalized immediately. I called my husband. Mabel's in the hospital? I can't make it. I'm swamped at work. You'll have to handle everything. But why does she have to be hospitalized? He didn't know our daughter had asthma. My husband, who never helped with childcare, didn't know anything about her. The answer was clear. He would use work as an excuse and leave it all to me. I just wanted my husband, as a father, to show some concern for our daughter, who was delirious with a high fever and struggling to breathe. As her mother, overwhelmed with worry, I wished for some support from my husband. Such a basic family picture seemed like a luxury to me. My daughter's symptoms had subsided with milk and medication, and she was sleeping. In the meantime, I hurried home to pack the necessities for her hospital stay. Then my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Why would she call at such a busy time? Maybe she heard about my daughter's hospitalization and wanted to help. Or was it another call filled with sarcasm? I answered the phone with trepidation. What are you thinking? Mabel's been hospitalized? And with severe asthma. She started berating me the moment I picked up. Just another call filled with sarcasm. Making your child develop asthma? It's your way of raising her. That's the problem. You must be living in a filthy room, not cleaning properly. The air must be dirty too. If you had paid attention to her diet, this wouldn't have happened. You're probably feeding her food that causes asthma. And are you feeding Luke the same asthma-inducing meals in that dirty air? I won't let it go if something happens to Luke. I needed to head to the hospital where my daughter was waiting. I didn't have time for such pointless lectures. What did she mean by asthma meals? It's one thing to belittle people, but this is too much. I'm heading to the hospital now, so I have to go. I ended the call forcefully. Sure, she was fuming on the other end, but I had reached my limit. Mabel is one thing, but what does she mean by that? Does she not care if her granddaughter is suffering? Anger bubbled inside me, and my hands were shaking as I gripped my phone. I called my husband impulsively. I was about to get busy with hospital visits and home care. If he wasn't going to help, I wished he wouldn't call. I wanted him to tell his mother to stop interfering. And I wanted my husband to understand my struggles. Don't talk to me about that. Mom's right, isn't she? You've been neglecting your household duties, using work as an excuse. It's your lack of management that caused Mabel's condition. Instead of understanding, he lectured me too. I'm not neglecting anything. I might not be able to do everything, but I'm managing the basics. I had no allies. Then talking like this is just a waste of time. I was wrong to expect even a little understanding from him. I hung up feeling hopeless. Tears wouldn't stop. I took leave from work during Mabel's hospitalization to focus on caring for her and the household. I had almost no time to rest, constantly traveling between the hospital and home. Meanwhile, Luke was still coming home late, leaving dirty laundry and trash everywhere. The table was littered with supermarket receipts and used tissues. Breakfast was left as it was. He had no intention of helping me. I cleaned up after him every day, feeling helpless. One day while cleaning at home, my mother-in-law showed up suddenly. The other day you left the laundry hanging on the balcony and didn't bring it in. Luke's shirt was damp all night because of that. So Luke had been bad-mouthing me again. That day, I stayed overnight at the hospital and couldn't return home. Couldn't Luke have brought in the laundry himself? And the orange juice in the fridge is expired. That's Luke's favorite juice. You should manage it properly and buy fresh juice. Well, if he likes it so much, he should finish it before it expires. He can buy his own juice. Neglecting household chores because you're caring for the sick won't do. You can leave Mabel to the hospital. Luke is working hard. Don't you think about supporting your husband more? You're really a hopeless wife. I was utterly exhausted. No matter what my mother-in-law said, my heart was so numb that I felt nothing. Mabel is only 3 years old. There's only so much she can do by herself. Luke is 34. He should be able to think and act for himself. If you're still worried, why don't you take care of everything for him? I finally let my inner thoughts slip out. What did you just say? Fortunately, my voice was soft enough that my mother-in-law didn't quite catch it. Don't mumble. If you have something to say it clearly. Her loud voice was piercing, and I turned my back on her. I'm off to the hospital now, so I'll have to go. Please buy the orange juice for him. With that, I left the house. My mother-in-law was still saying something, but I closed the door without looking back. Please, I just want her to stop bothering me. I was at my limit with exhaustion and stress. Still, I hurried to the hospital where my daughter was waiting. During Mabel's hospital stay, neither my husband nor my mother-in-law came to visit. Not even once. I had asked Luke several times hoping he would come, but he always refused, citing work. Mabel had fully recovered and was discharged from the hospital after a few weeks. She needed a few days of rest at home. I felt a little relieved as her condition stabilized. Luke continued to come home late, showing no concern for Mabel. Our conversations as a couple gradually decreased. She's discharged now, isn't she? Even a terrible wife like you should be able to manage household chores perfectly now. If not, you're a complete failure as a wife. My mother-in-law called me almost every day, busy with taking care of Mabel and housework. She never offered to help or even asked about Mabel's condition. She called only to make sarcastic remarks. You really are a terrible wife. That's why I dislike older women. Lately, it's been less about housework and more personal criticism. My mother-in-law probably just wanted an excuse to criticize me. Being called a terrible wife every day, I even started to feel mentally drained. One day I talked to Luke about it. You're called that because you are a bad wife. If you don't want to hear it, try harder. As expected, he sided with his mother. Don't come to me with that. I'm tired. You being like this is also why you're a bad wife. Take better care of your husband. And not getting along with Mom is a failure in itself. You're making such a kind mother angry every day. Look at yourself. You're really hopeless. Instead of support, I received more criticism. I regretted it. I regretted talking to Luke and left the room. I decided not to rely on anyone anymore. After that, Luke and I stopped talking. His return got even later, and we hardly spent any time together. He even started staying out overnight, sometimes for consecutive nights. When he did come home, he just dropped his dirty clothes on the floor, packed fresh ones in his bag, and left. Maybe this was all for work, but I couldn't believe that anymore. My mother-in-law's sarcastic calls continued. She was a woman who was just old and couldn't provide proper education, far worse than a young woman from a proper family. Lately, her sarcasm hinted at the presence of another woman. I didn't need her to tell me. I wasn't oblivious. During Mabel's hospital stay, while cleaning up scattered receipts on the table, I happened to see one for women's stockings and underwear. These were purchases he couldn't have made if he was working overtime. On my way back from the hospital, I bumped into Luke's boss. I had met his boss several times when I visited Luke's company for sales. His boss even gave a speech at our wedding and had been kind to both of us. Our company was famous for not having overtime. We even turned off the lights in the office at the end of the day. His words shocked me. Luke had been lying to me and spending his nights with another woman. His infidelity was obvious. I had been struggling alone. Should I endure it for Mabel's sake, or should I just get a divorce? But I couldn't come to a decision. One day I received a call from an unknown number. Who could it be? Because of the daily calls from my mother-in-law, I had become sensitive to the phone ringing. I hesitantly answered the phone. It was Luke's younger sister, 5 years younger than him, and living with their parents. We hardly ever met, our interactions limited to about once a year. She was busy with her own work and had a fulfilling personal life. Enough is enough. Why do you keep leaving an infant at our house every day? Both Mom and I are so inconvenienced, she said. I was taken aback by my sister-in-law's sudden outburst. What? What are you talking about? My bewildered response only infuriated her more. What do you mean, what? Are you pretending not to know? A mother who can't even take care of her own baby is a failure. This accusation was completely unfamiliar to me. I don't even have an infant. I've never left such a child with anyone. I've always taken care of my daughter, alone. I was confused. I took a moment to calm my thoughts. Aren't you mistaken? I've never left my child with you, and my daughter is already 3. The child is already 3 years old. I don't have an infant. Our stories didn't match up, and my sister-in-law became increasingly frustrated. But my words seemed to make her realize something was wrong. She took a deep breath and tried to gather her thoughts. What do you mean? She asked. I was told it's your baby. Mom and I are exhausted from taking care of the baby every day. If it's not your baby, then whose baby is it? I had no idea. Who was this child that my sister-in-law and mother-in-law were looking after? I don't know, but who told you that and brought that baby to you? My sister-in-law answered, confused. It's Luke. He brings the baby, saying Haley asked him to. I never said anything like that. And what about my mother-in-law? She should know our daughter is Mabel. Why would she accept this mysterious infant? Is there a reason they are caring for this baby? Or is their inexplicable behavior giving me a bad feeling? We should find out who this baby is, my sister-in-law agreed on the phone. A few days later, I visited my in-laws' house. Luke just brought the baby. He's here now, my sister-in-law whispered to me quietly as she opened the front door. I nodded and entered the house silently. Laughter from Luke and my mother-in-law could be heard from the living room. They must be playing with the baby. I peeked through the door gap. Luke was cooing at the baby in a high-pitched voice, his expression eerily calm. He had never spoken to our daughter like that. I was stunned. This was really happening. I had evidence, but part of me didn't want to accept it. Luke's affair. But I couldn't look away from the reality in front of me any longer. Okay, Daddy's gonna work now. Be a good baby, Luke said, standing up and walking out of the living room with a smile. Then he saw me in the hallway. His eyes widened, and his face changed color dramatically. He was speechless at the unexpected encounter, frozen in place. Luke, what's wrong? My mother-in-law asked, approaching with the baby in her arms and peeking out from behind Luke. Why are you here? She was shocked and seemed confused when she saw me. She desperately tried to hide the baby. So, you neglect our family and happily spend time with your mistress's baby? I had endured and turned a blind eye to Luke's infidelity until now. But with this, all the pieces fell into place. It was time to confront these two. The baby of his mistress? How dare you say that? Apologize now, my mother-in-law retorted, taking over for my visibly nervous husband. The rude one is you. You've been mocking me all this time. There's no way you didn't know anything. Then I turned to my husband. Must have been fun to cheat with such a young woman, right? I said, scattering dozens of photos on the floor. What is this? My sister-in-law was stunned looking at the photos. All of them showed my husband with a young woman. There were photos of them entering a motel arm in arm, and others of the woman holding an infant, walking around town with the two of them. Of course, that infant was the same one they lied about, claiming it was mine and leaving at my in-laws' house. Is this baby with your mistress? That's the worst. What are you doing? My husband was frozen like a deer in headlights. Sweat was trickling down his face. No use making excuses. I've investigated everything. I handed over the investigative report from the detective agency to my husband. The woman was the daughter of one of his clients, and he had been involved with her since she gave birth to the child. All his late nights at work were a lie. He finished work at his usual time and headed straight to her house. You're truly despicable. What were you planning to do from here? My husband finally spoke, trembling. The woman's pregnancy had been an unexpected situation. He had hidden the fact that he was married with a child, so she believed he was single. When she got pregnant, she pressed for marriage, and he was at a loss. Eventually, he couldn't handle it alone and confided in my mother-in-law. At first, she was shocked and scolded him. However, she quickly took a liking to the young woman, who happened to be the daughter of a president. She encouraged him to divorce me and marry her instead. But he couldn't marry her immediately because he was already married. He lied about family issues and made a deal that she could leave the baby at his parents' house whenever she went out. She started leaving the baby there almost daily. My mother-in-law, fully supporting the marriage with the mistress, agreed to take care of the baby. My mother-in-law and my husband made up the lie that the baby was mine to keep it hidden from my sister-in-law. How far were you planning to go with your lies, deceiving me, your mistress, her family, and even your dear sister? My sister-in-law was speechless, appalled. I'm sorry, my husband finally apologized to me and her, but did he think that was enough to resolve our issues? It wasn't going to be that easy. You owe an apology to more than just us. There's another family furious with you. My words made him pale. What? You don't mean... Yes, exactly that. I had already told everything to the family of his mistress. How could you lie about being single to your client's daughter? Daughter? This could ruin not just your personal reputation, but also your company's. My husband collapsed to his knees, drained of color. Unfortunately, I'm not a liar like you. Her parents are furious. They said they're gonna sue you. My husband crumbled, holding his head. Realizing he had no escape, he blurted out something unexpected. It's not my fault. This was all Mom's doing. I just followed what she said. It's not my fault. Sue me if you're gonna sue someone. I was dumbfounded by my husband's sudden shift in attitude. Blaming his mother? Wasn't it his responsibility for cheating and fathering a child? To call his own parent this? My mother-in-law couldn't stay silent at my husband Luke's behavior. And what do you mean by my order? You're the one who came to me for advice. I've been desperately cleaning up your mess, even taking care of the baby. The ugly quarrel between them started. Shut up. You're the one who said to leave everything to me. Now look at this mess. How are you going to take responsibility? Luke's argument was ridiculously foolish. Take responsibility? It's you who's irresponsible for having a child with someone else in the first place. Their low-level argument seemed endless. I stepped in between them and presented Luke with divorce papers. Let's deal with this through lawyers from now on. And with that, I left my in-laws' house. After all the help you've received, now you're blaming your mother just because it suits you? Grow up, you mama's boy. It seemed my sister-in-law had also had enough of Luke. And so the battle ended. I moved on without looking back, ready to start a new life. Later on, the divorce was finalized through our lawyers. With numerous proofs of infidelity in my testimony, I could proceed with the divorce. He agreed to pay child support monthly. My daughter showed no particular emotion about her father's absence. Having no memories with him, it wasn't surprising. Moreover, my ex-husband was sued by his mistress. His lies about being single and getting her pregnant had caused her great shock. As a result, he had to pay her a large amount in damages and child support. Left with no money for rent, Luke moved back to his parents' house. He worked day and night, juggling a day job and part-time work. But the client's president, still furious, eventually called off the deal with Luke's company. This incident spread throughout the company, and Luke lost his standing. Unable to bear the cold stares of his colleagues, he was forced to resign. With no income from the company and difficulty finding new employment, he toiled away at multiple part-time jobs. Still, his salary vanished each month, paying off his wife and the mistress, relying on his mother's small pension and savings for living expenses. Relying on your parents at your age, how pathetic. Find a decent job and move out quickly. Even the once close mother-son relationship deteriorated over money. Shut up, I'm working hard here. It's not like I want to be in this house, he would say during their daily fights. The once mama's boy was nowhere to be seen. If my savings run out, we'll have to sell this house. Find a job before that happens, his sister would urge him. Disgusted with their daily arguments, she eventually moved out to live on her own. Staying would only make her a target for their demands. Leaving was the smart choice. Months later, I happened to pass by Luke's house. The house I knew was demolished, and a new one stood in its place. Probably Luke couldn't find a job after all. His sister, tired of their constant begging for money, had likely cut ties with them. No one knew where Luke's mother and Luke ended up. Post-divorce, I moved to a new area, enjoying life with my daughter. Despite being busy with work, housekeeping, and childcare, I was fulfilled. Mom, see you later, my daughter cheerfully headed out. Have a good day, I watched her leave. Now off to work. And so another new day began. My baby was born. For the baby shower, please gift us $10,000. Startled by Catherine's carefree tone, I couldn't help but speak out loud. It had been years since I last spoke with Catherine. After what happened, I couldn't believe she would want me to celebrate. When I shared this with my husband Nigel, he surprisingly suggested, let's both go and give the baby shower gift. This was absurd, but Nigel seemed to have a plan, so I agreed to go with him to Catherine's house. It was a reunion with Catherine after such a long time. We greeted her with smiles. Congratulations on your baby, Catherine. Here's our gift for you, Nigel said, handing her a piece of paper with a smile. Catherine's face turned pale the moment she saw it. What is this? She asked, trembling pitifully. We meet again, Miss Catherine Jones, Nigel said as he removed his hat and smirked. Seeing Nigel clearly, Catherine's eyes widened in shock. You are, she stammered. I'm Margaret Harris. Just turned 30. My husband Nigel is 35, and we have a 4-year-old daughter, Susan. We live together as a family of 3. Our life is ordinary and peaceful, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. This is my second marriage. My first marriage was about 5 years ago. Susan is my daughter with my ex-husband Simon. Simon remarried too. To my sister Catherine. Catherine is a year younger than me, 29. Given our close ages, we should have remained reasonably close, even as adults. However, I haven't been in contact with Catherine for a long time. After what happened, it's understandable. People unaware of the situation often say things like, sisterly fight, make up soon. But what Catherine did to me isn't something I can just let go of easily. What happened between us sisters? There were complex circumstances involved. As kids, Catherine and I were just like any other sisters. The change started when Catherine entered middle school. She realized she was pretty. She became interested in fashion, hairstyles, and started dieting. Her studies took a back seat. Catherine often got scolded by her parents and teachers, and my existence was a pressure for her. Not to brag, but I was good at academics, which made her even more irritable when compared to me. I did my best to support her. I asked our parents not to be too hard on Catherine and even helped her with her studies at times. But it seems like things you're not interested in just don't stick. Her grades didn't improve, and Catherine dove deeper into beauty and fashion. She even started doing makeup and became a reader model for magazines by the time she was in high school. Catherine's social circle became quite flashy, yet she still looked up to me. Margaret, top of your class again? You're so smart, I really admire you. I brag about you to all my friends, she would say, always speaking kindly of me. Eventually, I got into a prestigious university. A year later, Catherine went to a beauty school. It was around that time when something happened that made me suspicious. I was at a cafe near the train station, working on an assignment, when I heard a familiar voice. It was Catherine and her friends. I remember she mentioned using this cafe sometimes. I felt awkward, but decided to stay, as they couldn't see me from where they were sitting. After a while, one of Catherine's friends said, "Isn't this cafe near the university your sister goes to, right?" She must be really smart. What Catherine said next was unbelievable. "Oh, you mean that plain nerdy loser?" I couldn't believe my ears. But it was undoubtedly Catherine's voice. "Wow, Catherine, that's harsh. Are you guys not close?" "Not really. We just get along on the surface. She doesn't care about fashion, just buries herself in books all day. She looks so dorky. I'd hate to run into her in town. She's always studying hard, getting praised by teachers and parents, so she must be happy, even if she looks dorky." Catherine laughed. I was frozen, shocked and angry at what I had heard. After that, I returned home quite late. Catherine was acting as usual when I got home late. "Welcome back, Margaret. You're late. Were you studying at the library again?" "You're such a hard worker." I was confused. Which one was the real Catherine? I didn't have the courage to confront her about what I heard, so we continued on as if nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. After graduating, I decided to move out when I got a job, reducing my contact with Catherine. Time passed and I turned 25. I was about to marry Simon Jones, a classmate from university. We reconnected at an alumni meeting and hit it off. Simon worked for a regular company, but his family owned a lot of land in prime city locations, making them quite wealthy. However, that wasn't why I was drawn to him. It was his generous nature that attracted me. Before the wedding, I went home to introduce Simon to my family. Catherine was there, of course. She had become an esthetician, clearly very conscious about her beauty. Her makeup, style, and fashion were impeccable, just like a model. I was initially tense, but Catherine celebrated my news with the same untroubled laughter as before. My heart gradually warmed to her. Maybe back then, she was just a frustrated teenager. Time has passed and we've all grown up. That's what I convinced myself of. Due to our closeness in age, Simon, Catherine, and I quickly became good friends. Sometimes the three of us would even hang out together. If Catherine and I remained awkward, it would have worried Simon too. It turned out to be a good thing. After marrying Simon, I soon became pregnant. I had decided to go back to my parents' place for the birth. So I consulted with them and started visiting a nearby hospital. It was a busy time. I had severe morning sickness and had to be hospitalized for a while. My parents visited, but I rarely saw Simon and Catherine. But I was too sick to worry about that. I had no energy to worry about what was going on around me. In hindsight, I wish I had confronted Catherine about what I heard. In hindsight, I wish I had been more observant. If I had, I might have noticed something. And then I went into labor and gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Susan. However, my health did not recover quickly, so I stayed at my parents' house for a bit longer. Simon, who was busy with work, hardly visited, leaving us to communicate mainly through emails and phone calls. Gradually, I got better and was ready to return to the home where Simon was waiting. I wondered what he would say when he saw the baby. With such thoughts, I opened the door and called out for Simon, but there was no response. I then opened the living room door and was shocked to see Simon and Catherine in a compromising situation. I was speechless. Simon quickly dressed, but Catherine seemed oddly calm. I asked, "What's going on, Margaret?" Catherine replied with a sly smile, "Welcome back, Margaret. This is a misunderstanding." I demanded an explanation, but Catherine nonchalantly said, "What's there to explain? You see what's going on. We're in a relationship." She then wrapped her arm around Simon. My head was spinning. What was Catherine talking about? Simon seemed resigned and apologized, saying, "Sorry, I can't believe this. It's unbelievable, both of you. Susan and I are right here, and you're doing this." Confused and upset, I ran out of the house, but I had nowhere else to go. Reluctantly, I decided to take Susan back to my parents' house. While I was explaining the situation to them, my phone rang. It was Simon. He apologized for startling me earlier and then dropped a bombshell. He had fallen for Catherine and wanted a divorce. I couldn't believe it. I asked, what? What are you talking about? We have Susan. I'll pay child support. I couldn't make sense of it. I listened to Simon in confusion. Why did he get involved with Catherine? He said he thought she was cute when he first saw her, but she's my sister, his sister-in-law. We have become close as a family. Then I was hospitalized for morning sickness, and that's when they grew closer. Catherine had tearfully confessed to Simon that I had always been mean to her, calling her stupid. I had never said such awful things. Clearly, Catherine was lying, but Simon believed her. He had his own insecurities too. He had gotten into university through a large donation from his wealthy family. From his wealthy family, essentially a backdoor admission, he hadn't gotten into the prestigious university on his own merit. He felt conflicted about this, especially compared to me who got in through regular admission. With this background, Simon empathized with Catherine, believing her story and becoming disappointed in me. You're smart and reliable, sure, but that's no reason to look down on Catherine. I'm disappointed in you for marrying such a mean and nasty woman. What are you saying? That's a lie by Catherine. Don't believe it. No, I won't be fooled. I'll sign the divorce papers and mail them to you. Wait, listen to me. My pleas were in vain. He hung up. I couldn't believe he'd fall for such a lie. I was stunned. A few days later, overwhelmed by everything, I came down with a fever. My parents, who knew everything, comforted me and took care of Susan. It was humiliating. I needed to recover quickly and fix this situation. As I was thinking this, the front door opened. I thought it was someone else, but when I came out of my room, it was Catherine. Oh, Margaret, you're here? Catherine spoke nonchalantly as soon as she returned. I couldn't contain my anger. What are you saying? What do you mean, Catherine? I yelled. Hearing the commotion, my parents rushed in to calm us down. But we didn't stop. I've always hated you, Margaret, Catherine said in a lower tone than usual, speaking slowly. I couldn't stand that you, just for being good at studies, received all the attention and love. That's why I wanted to take away something important from you. The house fell silent upon Catherine's confession. I couldn't believe she had such thoughts. Anyway, I'm glad I focused on beauty. Simon's just a regular guy, fell for me easily. Catherine spoke with a smile. So the Catherine I saw in that calf was her true self. What had I been seeing all this time? The real Catherine hated me so much, yet all I saw was the convenient illusion of a sister who admired me. As I stood there dazed, Catherine grabbed her things to leave. Simon's house with your plain and nerdy interior isn't to my taste. I'm gonna change it. Apparently she planned to stay at Simon's house. My parents tried to stop her, but Catherine left swiftly. I felt dizzy and had to sit down in the hallway. Then I heard my daughter Susan crying in the back room. I knew I had to comfort her, but I couldn't move. My parents helped me stand up. I don't remember much after that. I just didn't want to see Catherine and Simon's faces. After talking with my parents, we concluded that divorce was the only way forward. I cried, not for myself, but for Susan. Simon didn't care about her at all. What a terrible father. But maybe it's better not to have such a father. That thought was one of the reasons I decided on the divorce. I quickly signed the divorce papers that were mailed to me and took them to the office. Thus, my first marriage ended unceremoniously. Fortunately, my parents were on my side. They harshly told Catherine not to come back home. Thankfully, I never had to see Catherine again. Slowly, I regained my composure. Catherine and Simon apparently got married, but I didn't care anymore. My focus was on Susan and our life. Time passed. Luckily, my job was within commuting distance from my parents' house, so I didn't have to change jobs. I threw myself into my work. The alimony was paid regularly, but as a single mother, I needed to save as much as I could. I was a bit anxious. Maybe that's why people around me were worried. One day, a friend said she wanted to introduce me to a man she knew. I hesitated at first, but she said he was a sincere person, so I agreed to meet him. His name was Nigel Harris. He was 5 years older than me, tall and well-built. Contrary to his intimidating appearance, he was surprisingly serious and kind. He had been so focused on his work that he hadn't had much experience with women. We were naturally drawn to each other. Susan warmed up to him when the three of us went out together. One day, Nigel said he wanted to protect Susan and me from now on. I was moved to tears by his words. We got married, and now we're living a simple but happy life as a family of 3. I thought I had no more ties with Catherine, but then one day, while relaxing at home, my phone rang. I instinctively answered it. "Hey, Margaret, how are you?" Hearing Catherine's voice on the other end, I felt a chill. I should have checked the screen before answering. Too late for regrets now. "What do you want?" I replied, trying to sound as cold as possible. I didn't want my peaceful life disturbed anymore. Then Catherine cheerfully said, "I had a baby for the baby shower. Please gift us $10,000. What? After years of no contact, this was absurd, especially asking for $10,000. I was outraged, but Catherine kept talking, oblivious to my feelings. She continued, "Being a single mother is tough, you know. I could really use the money." Being an esthetician, Catherine had opened her own salon about 3 years ago. She got the land and building for her shop from Simon's parents in a prime location. She boasted about how successful it was, just showing off. I quickly ended the call, disgusted by her self-centeredness. Unbelievable. How could she dare call me after everything? I was still fuming when Nigel came home late that night. He's been busy with work recently, but always makes sure to have dinner at home, valuing our communication as a couple. He's always said, since our remarriage, "I want us to talk about everything." Over dinner, Nigel said, "What? You got a call from that sister of yours? She's running a salon now?" "Seems like it," I replied. "She got help from my ex-husband who was quite wealthy." What's her name now?" Nigel asked. Catherine Jones," I answered. After I answered, Nigel paused for a moment, then said, "I see, that explains it." "What? What's up?" I asked. "Well, how about we both go and give a baby shower gift to Catherine's place?" Nigel suggested with a mischievous smile. "What? Why? I don't want to do that." "Just trust me, I have a plan," Nigel assured me. Later, Nigel shared a fact and a proposal with me. I was shocked by what I heard. When the weekend came, after leaving Susan with my parents, Nigel and I arrived at Catherine's house. It was a large, impressive house. "Welcome." Catherine greeted us at the door, looking perfect despite having recently given birth. "It's been a while." "You haven't changed, Catherine," I said, forcing a smile. Then Catherine said with a smirk, "Of course. I never neglect my beauty routines, unlike someone else who got cheated on." Catherine was just being Catherine. I was irritated, but kept my composure for now. She led us to her spacious living room where a baby was sleeping in a crib. "Look, this is my daughter, Maria. Cute, isn't she?" Maria indeed looked just like Catherine, though her features seemed a bit sharp. Maybe it was just my imagination. "So about that thing?" Catherine gestured for money with her hand. "How brazen can she get?" I thought to myself. Just as I was about to retort, Nigel put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Nice to meet you." "I'm Margaret's husband, Nigel," he said with his hat pulled down over his eyes. "Oh, hello," Catherine muttered, uninterested. Nigel then swiftly pulled out a piece of paper and said, "This is our gift for the baby shower." "Congratulations, Catherine." Catherine's face turned pale the moment she saw the paper. "What is this?" she exclaimed, going white. Nigel then promptly took off his hat. "Nice to meet you again, Miss Catherine Jones. I'm Nigel Harris from the Metropolitan Police Department." Recognizing Nigel, Catherine's eyes widened in shock. "You, the detective who visited my salon?" She started trembling. The baby shower gift Nigel had given was actually a search warrant. It was permission from the court to search and seize property at her home. Catherine was visibly shaken. It turned out she had been committing fraud at her aesthetic salon, tricking customers into buying dubious products with false promises of guaranteed weight loss and signing them up for expensive and ineffective treatment plans without proper explanation. She kept repeating such actions despite initial warnings from consumer protection agencies. Catherine didn't listen, and the situation worsened, with more victims and even more aggressive tactics, like forcing contracts and filling out application forms without consent. Multiple complaints were filed, prompting the police to raid her salon. Nigel was the officer in charge. His profession was a police officer. However, Catherine had cleverly hidden evidence at her salon, making it difficult for the police to catch her. This was why Nigel had been coming home late lately. Coincidentally, the investigation target turned out to be my sister. Catherine's call about the baby shower gave Nigel a reason to visit her home. Fearing that going as a police officer might raise her guard, he decided to use the baby shower visit to his advantage. Thus, Nigel kept his identity hidden until the last moment, successfully entering Catherine's house. As soon as Nigel signaled over the radio, other officers who were waiting outside entered the house. "Sorry, but we wouldn't have been let in otherwise," he explained. Then Simon arrived. "What's all this commotion?" "What's going on, Catherine?" he asked. Catherine could only groan in response, unable to answer Simon's pressing questions. The police officers entered various parts of the house, seizing all sorts of items in cardboard boxes. As Simon gradually understood the situation, he questioned Catherine more intensely, seemingly oblivious to my presence. In a panic, Catherine suddenly lunged at one of the officers who had entered the house. "Stop it! Don't mess up our house without permission," she yelled. Nigel raised his voice. "Don't interfere. I'll arrest you for obstructing public duty." Hearing the word arrest, Catherine let go a look of frustration on her face. But she wasn't one to give up easily and glared sharply at Nigel. "I'll tell Simon's father, Daniel. He knows plenty of police officials. He can cover up anything like this." Catherine mentioned the name of Simon's wealthy father, Daniel Jones, who indeed had a wide network and many acquaintances among powerful figures. It made sense that Catherine was counting on him. Catherine turned to Simon and shouted, "You can do it, right?" "Your father can. He's always been donating money to various places to get favors done. What are you saying in front of the police?" Simon was flustered. Catherine, too agitated to think clearly about her words, blurted out everything. Nigel spoke calmly. "The Jones family, the long-standing landlords, Daniel Jones, Simon's father, and a former city council member, quite a wealthy man. So what? What about it?" "He's already been indicted for bribery in a corruption case. He's currently in custody." "What? My father?" Now it was Simon's turn to be thrown into disarray. The Jones family, despite their wealth, seemed to be mired in corruption. Simon's backdoor university admission suggested a tendency to solve everything with money. "Why is your father involved in such a thing?" "I don't know. But Catherine, you were committing fraud at your salon?" "Shut up, not now." The two began a heated argument. Amidst the chaos, I calmly addressed Catherine. "Why don't you just accept it?" "It's embarrassing." "What did you say?" "You lied again. 4 years ago, you fabricated stories about me to Simon, trampling on my heart. And now, you're deceiving your customers for your own gain. No matter how beautiful you are, your heart is ugly, the lowest of the low. You." As Catherine opened her mouth to retort, a police officer's voice came from the back room. "We found the business computer. Damn. Likely that computer contained the evidence." Catherine bit her lip in frustration. "Catherine Jones, let's continue this discussion at the police station. Please come with us." Catherine's face fell in despair, seemingly out of energy to resist. When brought to the station, Catherine initially denied the fraud charges. However, when the data on the computer was analyzed, evidence was found. Catherine was arrested. The charges were extensive, including fraud, coercion, and forgery of private documents. Catherine's salon, opened about 3 years ago, had apparently been in the red from the start. She had aggressively promoted products to secure even a little revenue. But she didn't want anyone to know about her dire financial situation. Having boasted about opening the salon, she felt compelled to claim it was thriving. Her sudden demand for $10,000 from me was likely just a desperate attempt to cover the salon's deficits under the guise of a baby shower gift. The number of victims who filed complaints against Catherine was in the dozens. Her salon sank further into debt due to liability for damages and eventually closed, leading to bankruptcy. Simon and his family, who had invested capital, were furious. And Simon naturally divorced Catherine. But Simon's household was no longer secure either. Simon's father, Daniel Jones, had also been arrested for bribery. Simon's family was scrambling for money and had to let go of all the land they owned. Simon originally worked at the real estate company run by his father. However, with his father's arrest, the company's control shifted to executives outside the Jones family. Simon was forced out of the company. He later found a job at a completely unrelated company through his connections. But it seems he is now struggling with demanding, low-paid work and having a hard time adjusting to the unfamiliar job. In such a state, he was obviously unable to take care of a child. Maria, the daughter of Catherine and Simon, was temporarily placed in a child welfare facility. It was unfortunate that Maria was born into such a family. As I reflected on the tumultuous days, I realized something. Months later, I attended Catherine's trial to see if she had shown any remorse. It felt like my final duty as her sister. But reality was not so kind. In court, Catherine kept repeating, "I'm not wrong." Denying all the evidence of fraud, she argued, "I only helped the customers who wanted to lose weight and be beautiful." Her face was marked with dark circles and her hair was unkempt. The once meticulously maintained beauty was nowhere to be seen. It seemed her lifestyle had finally taken its toll on her appearance. Catherine looked truly pitiful. I watched Catherine and thought back on everything that had happened. It all started with her jealousy of me. But I had never said anything mean to her. Our parents, initially upset with Catherine's lack of interest in studies, eventually stopped scolding her. Catherine had let her own complex feelings distort her perspective. Over time, she began lying casually. These lies continued, eventually leading to her downfall. Becoming her own truth over the real facts, Catherine is continually looking away from reality. She is fabricating twisted facts, not considering for a second that she is in the wrong. And this is the result. Poor Catherine. Eventually the verdict was given. Due to the severity of her actions, she received a 3-year prison sentence without probation. It was to be expected. Yet I can't help but hope she will come to her senses. I wish she would consider, even a little, the pain of those who suffered because of her lies. I hope she can take a good hard look at herself while in prison. Months later, on a certain holiday, Susan, Nigel, and I were at the park. We spread out a picnic on the grass, enjoying a light and peaceful atmosphere. "Let's eat our sandwiches quickly. I want the tuna one," I said. "Hey, Susan, leave some for your dad," Nigel added, and Susan laughed happily. We were back to our happy, normal life. Thinking back, the family I grew up in was also peaceful like this at first. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that I'm not perfect either. I have moments of envy too. But instead of hurting someone with petty jealousy, I want to cherish feelings of compassion for others and focus on the small joys of everyday life. That way, I won't be consumed by negative emotions. As I watched Susan and Nigel happily eating their sandwiches, I silently wished for these peaceful days to last forever. Living in a high-rise condo is just the best. I definitely made the right call by signing the lease. A high-rise condo? What are you talking about? I asked. "I'm talking about our new home." Obviously, my husband replied with a full smile. "What are you even saying?" I've never heard such a conversation before. "Where did the money come from?" I inquired. "It's the insurance money left by your previous husband," my husband explained. Just then, someone visited us, my mother-in-law. "Why are you here?" I asked her. "I'll let myself in," she replied, walking right into the house. "I've been waiting for you, Mom. Is it about that matter?" my husband asked. "Yes, please have a seat," my mother-in-law replied. From their conversation, it seemed that my mother-in-law knew about the high-rise condo too. I was the only one left out. Then, my husband said something outrageous. "We're going to live in the condo, the three of us," he announced. "How can you just say that all of a sudden?" I asked, shocked by his selfishness. "If you don't like it, we can get a divorce." "I don't mind," he replied callously. I was speechless. Then my mother-in-law smirked and mocked me. "Don't be so surprised. You'll handle all the household chores, right?" Not only did he sign a lease for the condo, but he also planned to treat me like a maid. I had been balancing work and household duties, but I was reaching my limit. I went to the bedroom, took something out of the drawer, and showed it to my husband and mother-in-law. "What is this?" I asked. "A divorce paper," I continued. "I've already found a lawyer." It was good that I had prepared it in advance. Both my husband and mother-in-law looked at each other, shocked. Afterward, I divorced my husband and moved abroad. But my revenge didn't end there. There's more to come. As a result, my husband and his family faced a huge consequence. My name is Susan, and I turned 40 last month. Now I work at a securities company. I got into investing in college and became deeply involved. That's when I met my first husband. How about we go out for dinner sometime? He asked. Sure, where to? I replied. I found a great place recently. Look forward to it. We continued as good friends, and at the time of graduation, he proposed, and we got married. My husband was an investor and had a decent fortune, but he never bragged or settled for it. I truly believe those were happy times. Your husband had an accident. Please come to the hospital immediately. It was right after I finished work. I rushed to the hospital, but he was already gone. My mind went blank, and I don't remember much after that. I was 30 years old. For years after losing my husband, I couldn't accept reality and time just passed by. I inherited his assets, but honestly, I didn't care. Are you okay? Dan, my current husband and a co-worker at work, asked kindly. Yes, I'm fine, I replied. You don't look like it. Back then, I was grieving the loss of my first husband, feeling a profound sadness, but also loneliness. Dan always listened to my complaints and stories without ever seeming annoyed. Looking back, I might have been an easy target during that time. How about we grab a meal sometime? I suggested. Oh yes, I found a great place, but it's awkward to go alone, Dan replied. I see. Being with Dan was comforting. Our relationship continued, and when I was 34, he proposed. I accepted. It wasn't that I had forgotten my first husband, but I did need support. I told my parents, but one person objected. But I've made my decision, I said firmly. I'm worried. Are you sure he's okay? My friend asked. What do you mean? I replied, isn't he just after your money? That's not an issue. We haven't even discussed that. My sister lived abroad, unmarried, enjoying her life alone. I admired her, but I wanted someone by my side. Eventually, my sister came around and our married life began. However, there was one concern. My mother-in-law, Susan, you'll be following my instructions from now on. My mother-in-law didn't live with us, but she came to our new home and said that. Then she left. Huh? Sorry about that. I didn't expect my mom to say something like that. Don't worry about it. Okay. At that time, Dan helped me through it, but she kept visiting, nagging, then leaving. One weekend, my mother-in-law asked, didn't you lose your first husband? Yes, I did. I thought it was insensitive to ask, but I answered to avoid future trouble. Well, my first husband was an investor. An investor? He must have made a lot. Not really, as far as I know. Can't be. Dan was there too, and as soon as I mentioned investor, his interest peaked. Could you make some coffee? Oh yes. While preparing coffee in the kitchen, I noticed them talking. Susan, is my coffee ready? I'll bring it right now. When I returned, their demeanor had changed back to normal. After she left from her usual chit-chat, Dan confronted me at dinner. Why didn't you tell me? About what? About your first husband. I just thought it wasn't necessary to discuss. Does that mean you don't trust me? Why would you think that? I just didn't think it was important. However, Dan remained irritated. At that moment, I couldn't understand why he was so upset. I will find out why later. From that day, Dan became harsher towards me. How was work today? Oh, I'm not feeling well. I'm gonna take a day off. Right? Dan started taking more days off. Since we work at the same company, colleagues would ask why he was absent, but I just said he was feeling under the weather. However, thinking back to the day before, it was obvious he was faking it. I couldn't stop wondering what he was up to all day at work. And then when I got home, I found the room cluttered with stuff everywhere. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, just looking for something. But I can't find it anywhere. Should I help then? Suddenly, Dan raised his voice. Susan, don't do anything. Don't touch it. I was taken aback by his sudden outburst. So, are you feeling better then? Feeling better? Oh yeah, much better. I've been sleeping all day. I realized right away, Dan was faking being sick to look for something. Something he didn't want me to find. This situation repeated several times, and since he couldn't find it, Dan had a new plan. I'm going to the salon today, so I'll be back late in the afternoon. Okay, got it. Take your time. Yeah. He seemed oddly happy. Happy that I was going out. When I came back home, I could hear voices inside. There was someone else with Dan. I hesitantly opened the front door. And home. I heard a panicked voice from inside. Oh, you're back early. So who's visiting? Yeah, it's my mom. Your mother? Then my mother-in-law showed her face. You back already? She looked disappointed. I decided to ask her a question. Did you find what you were looking for? What were you looking for? Yes, that's why you came today, right? I thought Dan couldn't find it alone and asked his mother to help. You know? Dan interrupted. Mom, you don't need to say anything extra. And Susan, don't ask unnecessary questions. For some reason, I was the one getting scolded. Why do I have to be talked to like this? I haven't done anything wrong. You don't need to interfere. It's none of your business. That's right, Susan. It's not your concern. My mother-in-law, who was quiet until then, suddenly got fiery with Dan's words. Enough already. Can you just go somewhere else? This is my house, though. Dan's right. Just stay outside until we say it's okay. See, just like Mom said, go outside. Dan forcefully pushed me out of the house. And they even locked the door and put the chain on. Lost, I decided to consult with my sister. My sister is always reliable in times like these. Susan? What's up? Well, actually, I explained everything to my sister. At first, she listened silently, but even she was outraged by Dan and his mother's behavior. That's not normal at all. But why would they do something like that? While pondering, my sister seemed to have an epiphany. Maybe they're looking for something related to your previous husband's inheritance. Didn't you mention he was an investor? Oh, everything clicked. Their attitude had indeed changed drastically after I mentioned that. Seems like you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. After ending the call, I killed some time before heading back home. The door was unlocked, so I went inside. Dan's mother had apparently left already. Sorry about earlier. It's okay. I'm not bothered. Good. Dan seemed relieved, but inside I was seething with anger. They quieted down for a while, but it was clear they hadn't given up. That's why I acted immediately. I secured the documents I received from my first husband in a safety box. I thought it was secure. Only my sister and a close friend knew about this. This should keep it hidden and safe from them. I also prepared divorce papers, ready to use them if needed. I didn't want to be the one to initiate the divorce, so I was biding my time. Before I knew it, I turned 40. The one place I felt at peace was at work. Going out today? Mom wants me to help her with shopping. Have a good time. He went out with his mother almost every week. It was obvious they were planning something behind my back. I was almost hoping they would slip up. His mother started asking me to come over frequently to help with chores. Just need some help tidying up. Sure, with the storage shed outside his mother's house was an old family home where she lived alone. Managing it all by herself would be difficult. But it was strange, she never asked for help before she must be up to something. I worked hard cleaning the cluttered and dusty shed. It seemed like it hadn't been cleaned for many years, and it was overflowing with dust and garbage. After hours, I finally finished, only to be asked to clean inside the house next. Come on, don't just stand there. There's still a lot to do. She just gave orders from the living room. I could have complained, but I knew it would only make things worse. So I endured, saving it for the right moment. All done. All right, you can go home now. Her lack of appreciation made me glare at her. What's with that look? Nothing. If you have a complaint, just say it. No, I don't. Such an irritating daughter-in-law. I thought the same about her. I couldn't keep living like this. I started making excuses to avoid her requests, but she complained to Dan. Lately, you've been refusing to help Mom. I can't always go over there. She's your mother-in-law. Then you should go. You're her son. What? Despite his complaints, I didn't pay much attention. It was too exhausting to engage every time. Then one weekend, Dan returned with an unusual expression. I braced myself for something. Welcome back. We need to talk. Sit down. A talk? I was in the middle of preparing dinner and sat on the sofa. Dan had a smug look. High-rise condo is the best, he said. Signing the lease was the right decision. A high-rise condo? What are you talking about? I asked, confused. It's about our new home, obviously, Dan replied with a big smile. What are you saying? I asked, still not understanding. It's from the insurance money left by your previous husband, Dan explained. Just then someone knocked at the door. It was my mother-in-law. Why are you here? I asked, surprised. I'm coming in, she said, marching right into the house. I've been waiting, Mom, Dan said. That matters, right? Yeah, please have a seat, I said, gesturing towards the sofa. From their exchange, it seemed like my mother-in-law also knew about the high-rise condo. I was the only one left out. Then Dan blurted out something outrageous. We're gonna live in the condo, the three of us, he said. How can you just say that all of a sudden? I asked, shocked. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce, Dan said nonchalantly. I don't mind, I replied, speechless at his selfishness. My mother-in-law started smirking and mocking me. Don't be so surprised, she said. You'll handle all the household chores, right? Not only had Dan signed a lease for the condo, but he also planned to treat me like a maid. I had been balancing work and household duties, but I was reaching my limit. And you don't think I can afford such a thing, right? I asked. Yes, that's right, Dan replied. But it's not me who's paying. You mean me? I asked, shocked. Exactly, Dan said. You've been hiding the inheritance from your previous husband from us, haven't you? We couldn't find it, but we realized we didn't need to, my mother-in-law added. That's despicable, I said, feeling betrayed. Say whatever you want, Dan said with a dismissive tone. Dan and his mother had changed their strategy, thinking the inheritance was out of reach. But they were gravely mistaken if they thought I'd comply. I went to the bedroom, took something out of the drawer, and showed it to Dan and his mother. What is this? Dan asked, confused. A divorce paper, I said firmly. I've already consulted a lawyer. It was good that I had prepared it in advance. Dan and his mother looked at each other, shocked. They never imagined I would take such a step. If you do this, you'll regret it, Dan said, trying to intimidate me. Are you sure about this? My mother-in-law asked. Yes, I replied, standing my ground. I've been waiting for the right moment to divorce. Think it over? Nobody will be happy with this. It's too late now. I've already decided. Then do as you please, Dan. Are you serious? Calm down. She won't listen to anything. This was convenient for me. Then will you sign it right away? It's okay, right? Yeah, I'll sign it. Dan, ignoring his mother's advice, signed his name. Such a foolish man to do this on a whim. Thank you. I'll file this. If you're satisfied, then just leave. I was planning to do that anyway. Goodbye. Wait, Susan. And so I left the house. I booked a hotel and decided to think about what to do next. It had been a long time since I felt so at peace. Then I contacted my sister. I needed advice about what to do next. I need to talk to you about something. You're calling about your husband and mother-in-law, aren't you? You know me so well. So what happened this time? Well, I'm thinking of getting a divorce. I see. My sister wasn't surprised. She probably saw this coming sooner or later. The reason is the worst. Dan signed a lease for a condo without telling me. What? So they found it? No, they couldn't find it, so they resorted to this as a last resort. That's ridiculous. My sister sighed. All that's left is to file the divorce, but I'm not sure what to do next. I have a good idea. What? Tell me. Well, her suggestion was surprising, but it seemed like a viable option. The next day, I gave notice of my resignation at work. I enjoyed my job and wanted to continue, but the thought of sharing the same space with Dan suddenly became unbearable. I was persuaded to stay, but I explained my situation, and they understood. And a week later, I was to meet my sister at the airport. In the meantime, I made preparations, but there was no contact from Dan or his mother. See you at the airport tomorrow. Okay, is your luggage all set? It's fine. I got rid of everything unnecessary while no one was at home. The next day, after filing the divorce papers, I flew overseas with my sister. I hadn't been abroad since I traveled there with my first husband. There was a mix of excitement and anxiety. My mother-in-law might have known, but Dan faced a huge consequence for his actions. The only regret was not being able to see his reaction when he realized it. This is our new home from today. Impressive, isn't it? More than impressive. It's huge and fantastic. Now you can do whatever you want here. Thank you. Honestly, it was much more impressive than the high-rise Dan had leased. The thought of starting a new life in this house filled me with excitement. 3 days later, my phone rang. Hello? Susan, stopped in. It was my mother-in-law. I didn't expect her to be the one to call. calm down, please. Ever since you left, he's gone crazy. Gone crazy? He tried to cancel the lease on the condo and couldn't. And he hasn't come home since. Dan couldn't face reality and had run away, it seemed. But that was no longer my concern. That's unfortunate, but it has nothing to do with me. Please solve your own problems. She got angry at my response. This is all your fault for hiding things. Take responsibility. I took a deep breath. Don't blame me. The one who went off the rails is at fault. You're the worst. The worst is on your side. Anyway, what happens to him is none of my business. I'm hanging up now. I ended the call. My sister spoke to me. Your ex-husband? No, it's about my mother-in-law. I bet it's nothing good, right? Yeah. She's troubled because they can't cancel the condo lease. What? That's all their own doing. I told her that, and she got mad. They're really stupid. We continued to laugh about it together. I never thought I'd have such a fun time talking about such things with someone. That day, my sister and I celebrated with drinks until the morning. Just when I thought it was time to sleep, I received a call on my smartphone. Again? What a hassle. Thinking it was my mother-in-law again, I checked the screen and saw it was my ex-husband Dan. I hesitated but decided to answer, curious about his situation. What do you want? Where are you now? Why do you ask? I want to come see you. I don't have any business with you. Dan didn't know where I was. He couldn't imagine I was not in the US. I have something to discuss with you. Where are you? I can tell you, but you won't be able to come. Do you still want to know? What do you mean? Just tell me. I'm overseas right now, living with my sister. You can't come here, can you? Dan was speechless when he realized I was abroad. By the way, you're troubled because you can't cancel the condo lease, right? Yeah, that's right. So, just so you know, I'm not going to do something stupid like helping you. What? You're calling because you can't pay for it yourself, right? This is all your fault. Then sue me? Though that would be pointless. I provoked him further. Since it has come to this, I'll provoke him thoroughly and then hang up the phone. Don't mess with me. Who's to blame for this? Let me tell you, it's you. This is the result of your reckless actions. If only you had told me where the inheritance was. I didn't tell you because I knew this would happen. You and your mother are just greedy for money. That's not true. Then why did you desperately search the house? It's really sad. Anyway, since you signed the contract, you handle it. I'm hanging up. Wait. Just help me a little. No way. Seeing no point in continuing the conversation, I hung up. How disappointing can a man be? But I wondered how my ex-husband, burdened with huge debts, would survive. That was the only thing I was curious about. Half a year passed since I came here, with no further contact. I'm thinking of going back home. What about you? Yeah, I'm curious too. Let's go back. Then it settled. We decided to temporarily return. I was curious about my ex-husband and his mother. I went to my old house, but Dan wasn't there. Going to his mother's house, I found it was now vacant land for sale. Well, that figures. Then someone called out to me from behind. A neighbor who knew my former mother-in-law approached me. They said they had moved out like a night flight a few weeks ago. Not surprising, really. I also visited a friend. It was a former colleague. Long time no see. How've you been? From this friend, I learned about my ex-husband's current situation. So that's what happened. Yeah, he quit the company after signing a lease for that expensive condo, but doing that only makes things more difficult. So where is he now? Now he's somewhere in the countryside. Sounds like them. I doubt they can lead a decent life. That's harsh, but we're divorced after all. Just as I thought, they were struggling. But the hardest part was yet to come. I couldn't help but laugh. Now, I'll live freely with my sister. I probably won't marry again, but that's fine. I will enjoy my freedom.